Hi, my name is Amy Bucciferro, and I'm going to be talking about functional communication training and why I support this type of intervention. First of all, we're going to talk about what functional communication training is, the steps of how to complete functional communication training, why it's important to teach children and the impacts it can have on their lives, the research behind it, and then the problems that some individuals have with functional communication training. So first of all, what is it? Well, it's a training that helps students who have interfering behaviors learn a replacement behavior to help them improve in their communication skills. These interfering behaviors can be anything that disrupts their life in any way, shape, or form. Could be aggression, self-harm, or yelling out, or anything like that. For example, if a student bites himself to get attention of a teacher or another professional in the classroom, that is an interfering behavior due to self-harm. And what you can do with FCT is to replace that biting of themselves with a phrase saying, I need help with whatever they need help with at the time. It could be that they bite themselves if they need to go to the bathroom, or if they just need someone to come over and check their work. And so that is different things that you can do. And so what we can do and how we do functional communication training is you start with a behavioral assessment. And so this assessment is a direct and indirect form of seeing what the specific behavior is, when the behavior is being used, and why the behavior is happening. So this gives the professionals an idea of what kind of behavior that they can replace with the interfering behavior by giving them like a target behavior. Target behaviors are a more developmental, appropriate form of communication. So this is a phrase saying, I need help now, or can you please pay attention to me, or something like that, rather than screaming or biting themselves or hitting other people. The learner benefits from this reinforcement that you get from teaching this new behavior, because it's an easier way for the kids to say, oh, I get more attention if I do this other behavior, like ask for help rather than biting myself. And so this type of thing, it promotes generalization, and that's really important for the child to use in all sorts of different learning environments. There's 13 specific steps to functional communication training. First is identifying the interfering behavior, which goes along with step 2, which is the behavioral assessment. Then you have to identify the replacement behavior. You have to design and implement the data collection procedures. So watching the student to see when the behavior happens exactly and keeping track of how well they respond to the treatment and intervention. Then you manipulate the environment to elicit the behavior. So for example, if the student most likely uses their inappropriate behavior during reading time, and when they want to talk or when they have a question and they start screaming or anything like that, you want to get them into that environment that it happens most frequently to start implementing the treatment, because that's where they're going to start using it. So if they scream every time they want to talk, that in reading time, you will tell them, oh, we don't scream when we talk, but we can raise our hand and then the teacher will call on you and then you can talk, or something along those lines. And then you can generalize it to other situations later on. Next step is planning opportunities for generalization. This is really important because you don't want them to only use their new behavior that's more appropriate in one setting, because that just will confuse the child and overall give them different feedback from different places. So the generalization will take a while, and it might require multiple communication partners, but we'll talk more about generalization later. Step 7 is prompting the use of the replacement behavior. So after introducing the replacement behavior, if they forget it, you might have to say, oh, is that how we ask? Or is that what we're supposed to do if we need attention? Something like that, just to prompt the behavior. And then 8 is not reinforcing the interfering behavior. So just plain right ignoring them if they're using the wrong ones. And then 9 is providing reinforcement when they use the proper form of communication. And then 10 is shaping the response. So you want them to still create the more appropriate behavior. And then 11 is fading the use of prompts. So you don't want to prompt them every single time or give them reinforcement every single time. You want to fade it away so they can do it by themselves. And that goes along with 12, which is fading reinforcement. And then 13 is monitoring learning progress and how they actually learned the behaviorals. So generalization. Generalization is really important to teaching kids the functional communication training because you want them to use the appropriate behavior in all settings, in school, in the home, in the community, because that gives them a better way to express themselves and to have other people understand why they are doing something or what they need. Training should take place with the communications in all part of the child's life, with where the interfering behavior takes place. So if the child screams or bites themselves to get attention everywhere, then you want to train people in their life, everyday life, not just in school. And so this is important to train family members, siblings, any people in the home or in the community that they see all the time, of how to reinforce / prompt them to use different things. You also want to train them to respond appropriately to the interfering behavior, because if they each have a different response, the child's going to learn something different from each individual person, and that will confuse them, and it'll take a lot longer to learn a behavior that is more important for them. And sometimes behaviors can generalize in different settings with minimal trainings or no training at all. According to an article Durand and Carr wrote in 1991, they did training and generalization with students, and some people they trained a little bit, some people they trained a lot, and some people had no training. And even with the most minimal training or even no training, generalization was still happening with children all around. So there's a lot of evidence-based practice that was done with functional communication training. In our book, it talks about there's over 200 studies done to support this training, and as of now, there's probably even more than that. According to Trigger, Hanley, and Bruzik, functional communication training is one of the most commonly used treatments to help severe behavior problems because it uses positive reinforcement or in different settings, and a lot of people can work on it at one time. Some people have problems with functional communication training because people recommend using it with multiple different communication partners, and I think it's hard to get real training from certified people. So it takes time to train other people, and they don't want to spend the time training them, or they don't think they're adequate enough to train them. But research does not describe the best way to train people, but they do say it's ideal to train the caregivers in some way, shape, or form, whether that's giving them an informational handout or meeting with them just to show the communication partners what you're doing in the classroom. Other things that are different is the consequences. There's 3 different types of consequences that could be used in functional communication training, which is reinforcement, extinction, and punishment. And people always argue about which ones you should use. Should you punish the kid if they're doing something wrong? Or should you just reinforce the good behavior, or just take out extinction is when you just take out the bad behavior altogether and you don't let it happen. And according to Fisher's article, he talks about how it was important to use extinction along with a little bit of punishment for the best results, which contradicts the use of some people's view on punishing your children if they're doing something wrong. So overall, I feel that functional communication training is a great way to help children change bad behaviors and improve their learning by reinforcing a good behavior to replace the bad behavior, and also to train other people so that they get this good behavior in all sorts of different settings. Thank you.